speak and I can sit down?
Yeah, we can make more. Yeah, like this, like this.
Okay. Okay.
What's your name? Sorry.
Natalia Event.
Event.
Event. IVENT.
Event. Okay. Natalia Event. Natalia. How do you spell your surname?
IVENT.
Anything else you want me to say about you? An introduction?
Linguistic.
Huh?
Linguist.
Linguist.
Do you guys mind if I
One-
record on my little device?
Yeah, of course.
Linguist and joint founder of the Indoromni Vidyalaya.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
All right, I'll say that
Yeah,
then.
thanks. Okay.
I'll say
Okay. You guys rolling?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So what? We've got microphones. That will help.
It hasn't been very well recently.
Check 1 2 1 2. Okay. So welcome everyone. My name is Sukant Chandan. I'm a coordinator at the Malcolm X movement. And just a few words about the Malcolm X movement. Our first event was in June 2014. It was called Strike the Empire Back. And you can see it on our very popular and fantastic YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Malcolm X Movement. So please do have a look at that. And then we launched our first film festival for Malcolm X in the spring of 2015. So we only existed for a few years. We've held dozens and dozens and dozens of events. We've engaged with many thousands of people. So we believe in a struggle for liberation of oppressed people against colonialism and racism. This is our focus. We're inspired by Malcolm X because we feel that Malcolm X framework of struggle strategically is the one that we should adopt, which is basically that the strength of our struggle and the importance of our struggle is in our homelands, i.e. not in the West, in the places in the world that's oppressed by the West, or imperialism, or neocolonialism, or whatever you like to call it. And so we consider that that's really important today, that whereas the anti-racist struggle is very important in Europe and North America, and also in occupied Australia and New Zealand, that actually the struggle of the people of Iraq, of Palestine, of Libya, of Zimbabwe, of Syria, of Afghanistan, etc., is what we should be learning from. Because Malcolm X said we cannot be free in the West unless our people are free in the homelands. So that's the basic principle that we follow, and we think is very important. So today we have a really important event about a very misunderstood community, oppressed community in Europe, which is the Roma community. I myself don't even know so much about it, but I am proud that myself and the Malcolm X movement know the Roma Nation movement, of which representative, and also a representative of the Indian diaspora in the Roma community, Michael Daduch, or Daduk, I don't know how you... Daduch, I was right the first time, thank you. Yeah, Michael, so I know Michael for a few years. Brexit, I think, actually brought us together.
Yeah.
It was Suresh's conference against Brexit where we first met. So we have a few speakers here. They're going to speak about 5 to 10 minutes each, if that's okay, because we don't have too long. And thank you to Housmans Bookshop for hosting this event. They've been our partners for a few years now, and we really appreciate that. So it's going to be a really interesting event. I'm going to learn loads as well today, and we'll have a bit of discussion after the speakers. So is anyone who wants to go first, particularly, out of all you guys? Maybe Natalia, you want to start?
I can start doing it.
So all our speakers are Roma themselves, and we were just having a bit of a joke before. I look like a wizard and our sister looks like a witch today. See, I'm feeding into these racist stereotypes already here. I'm just a bit of fun. I'm making fun of myself. But really good to have Natalia Venn with us today. And she's a linguistics expert. We also have Sarah, who's the comedic expert as well from the Roma community, who I'm sure will contribute to the discussion as well. So please do welcome our speakers and welcome Natalia to the event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
You have to speak into the microphone.
I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the origins of our language and how it feeds into our sense of identity and who we are. As you may know, we are ethnically Indian. Our ancestors came from India originally, there's been a lot of debate about exactly when they left India, and we don't actually know precisely, but what we do know so far is that they left in several waves, probably starting in the mid-first millennium AD, and continuing probably until the middle of the second millennium. So it was quite a long process of diaspora that brought our ancestors to Europe. And our history is written in our language. Romanes is based in Apabhramsha Prakrit, which is also that's the demotic form of Sanskrit. When the Hindu scriptures were being written in Sanskrit, the ordinary people spoke Apabhramsha Prakrit, which is a closely related everyday version of Sanskrit, if you like, and that's the direct ancestor of Romanes. It's also the direct ancestor of many of the other Indo-Aryan languages, particularly, say, Hindi and Punjabi. And Romanes is actually very closely related to Hindi and Punjabi. I'll give you a little example. Take a simple everyday sentence. My hair is black. In Romanes, that's Mere bala kalihi. In Hindi, it's Mere bal kalihi hai. Almost the same. Just the verb at the end pronounced slightly differently. And for a lot of simple conversation, I can talk perfectly well with a Hindi speaker or a Punjabi speaker without an interpreter because of that similarity. However, because of the long process of migrating from India to Europe, as our ancestors moved around, they picked up other linguistic influences, loanwords. Starting off with Persian, because we came through Persia, Armenian, and then Greek, because our first arrival in the West was at the time the Byzantine Empire of the Middle Ages, which was Greek-speaking. So we've got little bits of Persian, Armenian, and Greek in our language. And then from the Byzantine Empire, our ancestors settled in the Balkans, from Greece up through Bulgaria, Romania, the ex-Yugoslavia. And then slightly later on, from the 14th to 17th century, there was a sort of second diaspora where our ancestors some of them set out from the Balkans and spread much further across Europe, coming as far west as the British Isles and as far north as the north of Russia. And as that second diaspora happened, there was quite a lot of development in different dialects by picking up loanwords from... I killed the microphone. This always happens, electronics. We picked up loanwords from European languages, and in each of our dialects, of which we have over 1,000 different dialects in about 30 different groups, the history of each dialect is actually written in the loanwords that we have. So you can, if you listen to a Romani speaker, you can tell where their ancestors went. So for example, my own dialect, and the dialect I speak has been in the British Isles for quite some time. And as well as the Persian, Armenian, and Greek loans that everyone has, I have a huge number of Romanian loans because my ancestors were originally one of the Romanian tribes. Then I have a handful each of Hungarian, German, and French, but no English. So you can see exactly how my ancestors migrated and roughly how quickly. They must have crossed Europe fairly fast because I only have a handful of words from Hungarian, French, German, but a lot from Romanian, a fair number from Slavic. As I say, we have over 1,000 different dialects in roughly 30 groups, and because of the loanwords, there can be difficulty with people from different tribes understanding each other. The original Indian core of our language is very similar in all of the dialects, but the loanwords can be quite different. So I might have difficulty talking to somebody whose people have lived in Hungary for centuries because they will have lots and lots of Hungarian words that I don't know. On the other hand, sometimes my Romanian friends don't know what it means if I use German or French loanwords. But the core of our language, as I say, is the same pretty much in all dialects. Because of this difficulty with the dialects, some people have suggested that we cook up a standardised version of our language and use it to replace all of our many dialects. I'm really against this because our dialects are our identity. They are the central part of who we are, our language. If you threw them away and imposed a standard language, we would lose not only our sense of identity via our real dialects, but worse, we'd lose a lot of ethnographical and historical information, like, as I just described, being able to trace where my ancestors migrated by what words I have in my dialect. So I'm very against enforced standardisation, although I'd be quite happy with replacing some of the European loan words with original Indian words to move us a little bit more back towards
I support that.
a purely Indian language, which would also solve the problem of mutual intelligibility, because it's really only the European words that are the trouble. The Indian core of our language is very mutually intelligible between all dialects. On the subject of language and identity, there is a saying, at least among the more conservative tribes, in Romanes, is "Konniginere Romnice Romnai," which means whoever doesn't know the Romani language isn't Roma. That's quite a controversial thing for me to say, because I come from a very conservative clan that still believes in such things. But there are quite a lot of tribes that, very sadly, and through no fault of their own, have lost the language because there was such terrible persecution. Notable examples have been Hungary, where the speaking of the Romani language was forbidden under the Empress Maria Theresa. Spain, where under Ferdinand and Isabella, the same. And also, in fact, in England, the Tudor monarchs went to great lengths to try to destroy our culture, and for that matter, our traditional religion was largely replaced by Abrahamic faiths. Our original religion was a derivative of Hinduism, of course, and that also was replaced. Now, I'm slightly conscious of time. I've been going on for quite a while. Does anybody have any questions?
Maybe after the other speakers we can take some more questions.
Okay, in that case, I'll hand over.
Thank you. Fascinating talk. Really appreciate it. Like, you can come back and ask questions after the other speakers. Michael Daduch is speaking next. He's a leader of the Roma Nation movement and a representative of the Roma section of the Indian diaspora, if I'm not mistaken. So please welcome Michael to the event.
I will stand if you don't
okay.
mind. I prefer.
Yeah, you want to sit down? Like a typical Indian, he needs to stand.
Sorry. Dear brothers and brothers, I see brothers here coming from Gypsy community. I see brothers from Roma, Bulgaria. Thank you, friends, for coming. Tonight, as Shukan Chandan, organizer of this event, and invite us, we call this event as We Are the Roma Nation. And this is the point which we want to raise here. And actually this is why I have the feeling that we need to do something about our nation status. Historically, Roma Nation, it's something really new to us. Because Roma Nation actually has been developed in Europe. It already started with the efforts with International Romani Union in 1971, and it was developed to the level that actually we have been recognized in the year 2000 as a nation, as a transition nation without state. But with the entering of the European policies, we lost this. After 2000, our presidency of EU, they lost the placement on the status in United Nations as a nation, that we are the nation.
Why did you lose that?
Why did we lose that? It's a good question. I think this is our misorganization. This is our own responsibility of the Roma leaders or any international Roma leaders. They fail in this.
The representation was
The
from
represent-
the IRU.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
And with the disorganisation.
This
What's the
organization,
RRU?
International Romani Union. International Romani Union, as you see, this is the flag. And as Mr. Shukan Chandan said, I am the representative of Romani Indian diaspora. And how this Indian diaspora actually happened? It was Mr. Rishi, Professor Mr. Rishi, which I researched, and it's lots of stuff on Google, on internet. You can see his efforts, his career, and how he connect us with European Roma, with Indian people. It was something amazing. You can see there are lots of historical facts and events also with Indira Gandhi as a prime minister, which was the need that he found out this guy. He found out that we are really similar with the language. He found out that Roma from Europe can speak really without the interpreter with Punjabi speaker. So in this time, it was the Roma Nation uprising. It was really the good thing what the Roma leaders wanted. It was really powerful and also with the respect, with the dignity. Actually, now we are in 2017 and our nation status and this respect was lost or is denied by the policy, also by the European industry, which is more called European Roma framework of inclusion. Also, the other interventions came up from USA, from Open Society Foundation, which are also influencing our nation status. So we, myself and other Roma around, we want to get the nation status back, and we want really to get Roma united and get real representation. We don't want just help Roma on the social issues. We want to help them in the political participation and to be equal as a nation to other nations. So Romani flag is here. You know, people say this is some social flag, but it's not social flag. Yeah, it's not LGBT flag. For LGBT flag is for everyone who can be. You cannot be Rome if you are not born Rome. You can choose be LGBT. But we have the Indian chakra in there. Indian chakra is symbolizing us the connection with strong India. This is again back to the language. When I come to this country 10 years ago, I found really hostility and brotherhood from Asian community, and most of us, Roma migrants living in this country, have the brotherhood and help, lots of support from Asian community, from Indian and Pakistani. Historically, there was not mentioned much more about history, but new research from Mr. Rishi from Indian Institute of Romani Studies is saying that actually the Indian history needs to be rewritten. The Indian history has been written by the British man. So now they found out that the historical facts are not correct. So they found out that we left Roma. We as a Roma left India roughly about 5th century, and our first religion, she mentioned Hindu, but I will say Buddhism. This is what Mr. Rishi said to me. We have been Buddhists, and we left India. We don't know why. Yeah, we don't know really reason why we left India. And when we travel around through Mesopotamia or Iran, nowadays Iran, to Turkey and to Europe, we adopted all the time the religion. Also, we catch the language. So when we came to Christian Europe in the 12th, 13th century, where the Crusaders have been fighting,
did you have much choice?
We have not much choice. Exactly, we have not much choice to become just Christian, and said to everyone who is non-Rome, we said, Goja or Gajo. We said to them that we are coming from the Jesus grave. So it was much more easy to us to be respected in the Christian white society. When we have been looking, when they call us Egyptian, because of the dark-skinned face which we have. In 19th century, when the 20th century came, there was some also repression. You can see all the history is written on internet. I'm not gonna beat you about history, but I will speak about the repression of first repression. Actually, first genocide happened with the Gypsy Huns. Gypsy Huns was the law in Europe that everyone who gonna see the Gypsy, you can kill him without any justice. That was the really barbaric law.
Where was that? What country?
In Europe, in Christian Europe.
All right.
The German lands. The German lands.
Yeah, also.
What period?
It was the period between 17th till 19th century. Then we have another repression which came up, and it actually because I'm Czechoslovakia, so we have after First World War. There was they gave us legitimation, Gypsy legitimation. Instead of giving us in first democratic in Czech, because I was I know from experience from Czechoslovakia, instead of giving us the proper identity as a Czechoslovakian person, they gave us gypsy legitimation, which actually helped Hitler to allocate us and then put us to gas chambers. In Czech Republic, it's one of the terrible places which 90% of our Czech Roma population has been murdered of the crimes committed by the Nazi. So then we have the Second World War, and we have been in the Holocaust. I'm not gonna call Holocaust, because Holocaust is actually the meaning of Holocaust. It is sacrificing to God, and we Roma, we didn't sacrifice our lives for God. It was the crime, war crime. I will call it simple genocide, but in mainstream it's Holocaust. But I don't like to use this word. We have our own name for it, which is Sarvnash, also Poraimus, and academics are fighting because what should be the word. So we don't even know how we call this tragical event, but it was the genocide. We don't know the death tolls numbers, exact numbers now. There are also academics, researchers are fighting. But I'll give you an example. In UK, the Holocaust Memorial Trust, which is government funded by Prince Charles, is saying that on the statement that 220,000 people have been murdered, which we don't agree. The research, or the goal from one of our Romani leader, his name is Romani Rose. He's from Sinti, he's from Germany. His goal was that the European Union actually adopted 500,000 as a number of the death tolls. But we have other academics, and one of the Roma academic is saying, Michael, it's gonna be 1 million, which his name is Hristo Kuchnikov, this professor. And another professor, his name is Ian Hancock, he's saying it's gonna be 1.5 million. And we also know that in Israel there is a museum, and there is displayed that 2.5 million Roma and Sinti have been murdered. So see, we have really problems to identify, exact numbers. In terms of the whole, after the Second World War, after the Second World War, there was lots of migration because the places have been empty after war. So they used the Roma and moved Roma from Slovakia, because Slovakia was in the Second World War fascist. They moved the Roma to the part of the German, also to Poles. And we had another repressive law in Europe, which was in 1958, and it was actually to stop our traditional cultural life, which is still present in UK, which is the traveling life. They took our wheels because they said, oh, you're gonna be communist, you're gonna be good laborer, you're not gonna do this anymore. So they took our wheels, they took our freedom. Because I believe that every person on this planet has the freedom of choose how we should live. And this is our really, living in the caravan, it's really freedom. If you are a religious person, I will say that we are following the Abraham, if you are Christian. Because Abraham was traveling also. He never asked for the land. So if you are really Christian, because I'm myself Christian, but we are not talking too much about it because he's Muslim. I'm Christian, and if you look at the Christian life and Bible, we are following the Abraham. We are not asking for land. We're still not asking even nowadays for land, even we are so much oppressed from Gaja. We're not asking for land. Gaja is everyone who is not Rom. So it can be you.
Diplomatic. This is not what I've heard you say before, Michael.
So we're not asking for land because we are following these things, and we are probably, I don't think so, we will, maybe next generation or third generation, maybe they will change and they will create Romanistan, but I don't think so it will happen now in these waves. So 1958 they took these wheels, and it's coming the year 1971. It was actually very hard to get our leaders to get together. It was the Cold War. And they get together in London and they said, we are the Roma Nation, they create the flag, we have the anthem, and they said the language of Romani language is the language of our nation. So in 2017, the nation status of the Roma people has been lost because of the policy of European Union. The policy of European Union put us as a social group. Social group are disabled people, for example. Social group are LGBT people. But we are the own nation. We have our own language, which no one can deny, and we have our own culture and tradition. So we are equal nation to any other else without state, because the nation should not be based on the land, but on the same kind. You are same kind, you are the nation. And you have the right actually to self-determine yourself how you want. So this is why we are doing this event, to explain Roma why we are the nation. And I will give the word to political scientist Orhan Tahir, who came from Antwerp, from Brussels, from Belgium, to speak about this, to speak about politics. Because we're not going to talk about equality and social issues. We want to talk about politics. Politics are quite different tema. So I'll pass you the word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Orhan Tahir. I'm a Romani person, originally from Bulgaria, but I live in Belgium, and I'm coming from Belgium, especially for this event. I would like to thank for the invitation to participate. And Natalie spoke about Romani language. Michael spoke about our history, and I will speak about our current political situation. And I will start by telling you a very interesting story which will help you to understand better our situation. This is a story told by a Sufi mystic. His name was Abu Bakr Shibli. He was born in Baghdad. He lived 21 centuries ago. And what is the story about? Once he saw a dog standing at the water's edge. The dog was very thirsty, but the dog was afraid to drink water. Because every time the dog approached the water, he saw his own reflection inside. And he was frightened because he thought it's another dog there. So finally, the dog became so thirsty that he leaped in the water, and the image of the other dog just vanished. And the dog was able to drink from the water. So why I'm telling you this story? Because there is a parallel with our current situation in Europe today. We see in the eyes of the others our own reflection, and we are afraid of our own reflection. Because what we see there is actually a nation of 12 million people. And a nation with a very ancient language, as Natalie mentioned, with a very ancient culture, and we are afraid. Because to be a nation is one thing, but to behave as a nation is something else. And it means responsibilities. It means change in our perception, change in our views about ourselves. And in this relation, I will employ here the Malcolm X terminology to explain it better. So, we, the Romani nation, we experience something like intellectual schizophrenia. Because we have this internal division, this internal debate, which Malcolm X explains when he speaks about the struggle between the field Negro and the house Negro. And the field Negroes are those living in the house of the master, who want to eat from his food and who are happy with their life.
They say we.
Yeah,
are
they identify themselves with the master. And we, the Roma Nation movement, the people, some of us, some of the movement are presented here, some of the leadership of the movement. We are Field Roma. We want freedom, we want self-determination, we want to control our own destiny in Europe. And we say that we are a European nation. Why we say that we are a European nation? Because, as Michael mentioned, the idea of nation is a European phenomenon. And that's true that we originate from somewhere else, that we came to India from somewhere else, we came to Europe from somewhere else. But the idea that we are a nation was born in Europe at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of 20th century. And we are a European nation. The Romani nation is a European nation because we spent 1,000 years in Europe, more than 1,000 years actually. According to the last genetic DNA surveys, we left India about 1,500 years ago. So we spent in India more than 1,000. We spent in Europe, more than 1,000 years, and after 1,000 years, we cannot be treated as immigrants. Logical. And we participated in the politics, in the European politics. We fought for the European nations in their wars. We contributed to the European culture, to the music, to the art, to the economy. But our contribution is not recognized. And we want recognition. And we don't want to be treated as social group, marginalized group, vulnerable group, as the European Commission wants to see us, to treat us. But we want to be treated equally, on the equal footage, on equal basis with the other nations in Europe. And there are other nations without state in Europe, so that's not a problem. And it shouldn't be a problem in the European Union, where we all are European citizens. And for this reason, we want to defend our political rights, to identify our political interests at European level, and to turn new page in our history in Europe. So we have to mention the great contribution of those people who adopted the anthem and the flag back in 1971. And people like Slobodan Berberski, like Gratan Paksan are among them. And but now we face another challenge. We have to go back from the field of integration, from the field of social issues, back to the field of ethno-political issues. Because the Romani question is a political question in Europe, in the European Union. And I will give you immediately an example, and I will show you how this is even related to Brexit. We took decision to establish our own political party at European level because our political interest is not represented. Although there are some members of European Parliament of Romani origin, the recent events have shown that they don't represent us. They don't represent our political interests in the European Parliament. For example, we submitted a petition against a fascist member of the European Parliament, whose name is Angel Jambaski, and none of the members of the European Parliament expressed publicly his support for our petition. And our petition was rejected, by the way, on very curious, absurd grounds. But anyway, because Britain is leaving the European Union, Brexit creates an opportunity, because 73 places in the European Parliament will become empty after Britain leaves, after Britain left. Because Britain has 73 maps at the moment. So now there is a discussion what is going to happen, what should happen with these 73 places. And what our proposal is that these 73 places are distributed among the so-called unrepresented nations and peoples in Europe. So, I think that it's completely logical, and it's just if 73 places are distributed among people like Roma Nation, like Catalans, like Corsicans, and like other nations in Europe who don't have their own states. Because we want a different European Union. If the European Union now is Europe of nation states, where states are represented, we want Europe of nations, where nations are represented, even the stateless nations. And 12 million Roma deserve representation, just like the citizens of Luxembourg, or the citizens of Finland, or the citizens of any other small country in the European Union, which has less population. And we are not minority in Europe, because they say you are the largest ethnic minority in European Union. No, we are not minority in European Union. We are 12 million people, and it's not minority. We are more than some other nations who have their own states. So we are not minority, we are nation. And that is why we took the decision to establish our own political party, which will represent our own political interests at European level. And we want to elect our representatives in the European Parliament. We want transnational electoral lists, so every Romani person across the European Union can vote for his own representative. And I will end up with the words of the great German writer Günter Grass, who had received the Nobel Prize for Literature. He passed away, by the way. He's not among us anymore. But in one of his speeches in front of the European Parliament, Günter Grass said that Roma are true Europeans, because Roma suffered a lot. Roma suffered genocide during the genocide, but Roma remained in Europe. Roma didn't go somewhere else to create their own state, as some other nations did. Roma remained in Europe, and Roma are still Europeans, and after 1,000 years we are truly Europeans. Because one of our values, freedom of movement, today is a value, founding value, fundamental value of the European Union. And it's our own value. We have been practicing the freedom of movement long before the creation of the European Union. And that's why we want respect as a European nation. And we hope that our dreams will become true in the future if we work together for our dream to become true. But it's a long, long way to walk. This is just the beginning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really, really fascinating, informative contributions from the panel. So we have about 20 minutes for some discussion and questions, etc. Just some immediate reflections from hearing all of you speak. Just the issue of freedom of movement is really interesting. As Michael put it, they took away our wheels.
Yeah.
You know, he put that quite succinctly and poetically. And this is a very live and important issue. I mean, historically, also it's really interesting, the colonial formation of the nation state and how that took away millennia of free movement of all the peoples, which is in itself a very interesting historical story. And the impact that it's had has been so traumatic for the people of the world. For example, I went on a protest today at the Libyan embassy. The protest should be at the Foreign Office, actually, and the British Foreign Office, not the Libyan embassy, because the British are primarily responsible and the primary perpetrators for the destruction of Libya in their war starting in 2011, and they colonized it before as well in history. But Muammar Gaddafi himself lived in a tent until his death, He was a Bedouin, and he was very focused on that. And the whole area of the Sahel, Sahara, North Africa, like many regions of the world, non-Western regions, have people who live in different sides of the border that wasn't imposed on them themselves. It was imposed by the French colonialists, or the Italians, or the British, etc. So this is a really important issue for us, because we have tribes of our people who are divided by colonial borders. So you have another example of an oppressed people. It's really interesting, well, hearing you explain that you consider yourself a European nation. I understand the rationale for that, which is very interesting as well. So lots of really interesting themes and threads here. So I'm going to open up. We have this gentleman here first, and I think you want to say something. If you don't mind speaking to the mic, just so the recording picks it up. Thank you.
I listened to what you said with some interest, obviously, but it raises, several questions, and also what Michael said. History is written by, the Roman history has been written by other people. It needs to be rewritten by the Roman community, because at the moment it doesn't make any sense. There's been nothing stopping Romani people from leaving India, from day one. So there's no reason why they would ever come here 500 years ago. They came here obviously they were here much longer than that. At least they must have come with the Romans, but why wouldn't they come before that if they wanted to come? It needs to be rewritten with a sensible perspective. There wasn't a border around India stopping Romani people from leaving. And of course you have the issue of, what about people in India who were perhaps the original Romani people? Curiously enough, there's quite a lot of people in India they describe as gypsies, which is really, a curious thing that people are called gypsies because they thought they came from Egypt. Now people in India who obviously never came from Egypt, the word has been transported from Europe back to India, and now they're calling people in India Egyptians, basically, who've never left India. It's a bit absurd, but it was the prescribed tribes, as they used to be called, I suppose. But that's all part of the history, I think, that needs to be rewritten. And if you're talking about we can't be free in the West if they're not free back in the fields, well, does that include India? Also, you say we're a European nation. The flag there that's being displayed, it's used all over South America for Romani people. And if you're looking at, again, where the Romani people came from or how they came here, most people would say that the Dom were the forerunners of the Rom, because a lot of Doms speak Romanesque.
No, they don't. They don't. Damari is not literally intelligible Romanesque.
Well, some people say they do. I haven't been and asked them, so.
I'm interested.
But they call Dom and we call Rom.
Yeah.
But that's just
The languages are related but not mutually intelligible. Damari is more different to Romanesque than Hindi or Punjabi.
Yeah, it's different language.
Yeah,
Totally
I can
different
understand.
language.
I have actually done this. I've actually, as long as the person speaks slowly and clearly, I can manage to have a fairly reasonable conversation with speakers of Punjabi or Hindi. I can't do it with a speaker of Damari. Damari does descend from Ramja Prakrit, but in a much earlier version. The Damari left India before we did, and has picked up some very different influences, most notably Arabic. So the grammar of the language is very, very different, and they're not mutually intelligible. I promise you that. I speak from experience.
Yeah. Can I just answer? Thank you for your question. Those people in Latin America, that's true, they are Romani people in Australia, Latin America, everywhere. But they also immigrated from Europe. Practically the Romani ethnic group, the Romani language as we know it, as we speak it today, was formed in Europe. It has its roots back in India. But if we have to be more precise, it was formed in the Balkans after contact with Greek, with Southern Slavic languages, with Wallachian language, which is today Romanian. And linguists say that we spent about 5 centuries in the Balkans before dispersing, before going to Britain, to France, to Northern Europe, Russia, and from Europe later to other continents. So when we are speaking about the Roma Nation, we are claiming that it's European nation, because even the first Congress back in 1971 took place in Europe, and in Orpington near London, and the most participants were Europeans, were Romanic people from Europe. And you are right that the chakra was taken from India. It symbolizes our roots, our connections, but we have to make a distinction between Roma ethnicity, Roma ethnic group, and the Romani nation. And a nation is something different. It's a social construct. It's a new phenomena. It's typically European phenomena. Practically, there were no nations. No nation existed before 18th century. It was new invention by the Europeans. So what we say is that we are also entitled to the right to be a nation, because in Europe, this is Europe of nations, and if we are not a nation, what we are? We cannot be social group, we cannot be marginalized group, we cannot be criminal group. We want equality.
Can you be a race?
No, we cannot be a race. Thank you for the question, by the way, because we have white and black people.
Yeah.
We have both. We have different colors. And even if you go back to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Northern India area, you will see people with pale skin and even red hair together with people with dark skin. So color cannot be an identifying factor, determining factor for who we are. Religion cannot be identifying factor for who we are. Because Michael is Catholic Christian. I'm Muslim. Many of our people are evangelical Christians, Protestants. And religion is something that can divide us. But religion is not something that can unite us. It's our ethnic identities what unite us. And that's why we consider our nation as a European nation. It was created in Europe, and all Roma people immigrated from Europe to other parts. And practically, this is also a very interesting argument, by the way, there are no people, even today in India, there are no people calling themselves Roma. The only people identifying themselves as Roma live outside India. This is also curiosity. So, this is matter of fact. All Roma people live outside
They
India.
must be there.
Yeah, but we don't find them. There are no people. They call themselves with other names. Banjara, Lohar, and so on and so on and so
So
on.
there's no direct connection?
There is no people calling themselves Roma in India today.
I can give you a bit of linguistics on that if you're
Okay.
interested.
So,
Yeah.
it's and just another thing. You are right about the concept of gypsy, but the concept of gypsy was introduced by the British administration, by the British colonial administration. It's another paradox, by the way, that the British colonial administration decided that, on the basis of similarity, they decided that if some people remind them of European gypsies, then they must be gypsies. Even if they may have different origin, they may speak different language. So the construct of gypsy was a social construct which not always overlap with the ethnic concept of Roma, who is Roman. So,
But the people in the Balkans who call themselves Egyptians, did the British tell them that?
sorry?
You know, there's people in the Balkans who prefer to be called Egyptians,
Yeah?
and they speak Romanes, right? And they want to be called
Okay.
Egyptians. They don't even want to be called Roma.
The ones,
Yeah.
the ones who call themselves Egyptians have lost the language.
Yeah. So I will give the microphone maybe to.
Do you want to say
someone
something
can I just have a
before I bring in Natalia? 1 second. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for such an insightful, interesting set of talks. And I just wanted to ask a question about the culture of travel. And I know there are a lot of myths and mysteries behind it, but firstly, why would you think that the Roma left in the first place and left India, and was there a difference that they found with the Indians? And then also, why did they feel the need to keep travelling and there wasn't an idea of permanent settlement like there were in some Jewish communities in ghettos in certain parts of Europe? So yeah, the idea of travel, why they left, and also the possibly how would you find the comparison with the Jewish communities and their discrimination in Europe?
Thanks. Before the panel come back on that, just Natalia, you want to say make a few comments?
Yeah.
Please.
Do you want me also to take the one about why we left? 'Cause I know
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can.
On the subject of why we left India, it's not absolutely clear, but what we do know, and it's actually part of my current research, every tribe has some sort of myth that tells of us having committed some terrible sin in the past and being condemned to wander as a penance for it. The details of what this sin is supposed to be vary enormously, and in many cases now have got mixed up with Bible stories after the coming of Christianity to the Roma, to many Roma. The oldest version I've managed to find is that owned by my own tribe, and that tells of us having a big bust up with the rulers, specifically the Brahmins, and being thrown out. We don't know precisely what for, but there's a strong suggestion that it was religious differences, and very possibly the fact that we practice magic. On the language question, as to why aren't there any people in India calling themselves Roma, the linguistic connection is with the caste known as the Doma, who do still exist in India, and the D of Roma is actually retroflexed, which makes it sound to European ears like an R. And if you listen to speakers of the very oldest dialects of Romanese, like me, you may notice that the R, when I say Roma, is slightly different to the R when I say, for example, Paravel. It's slightly retroflexed. We are Doma.
Can I just add something? Yeah. Thank you very much for this interesting question, by the way. So, part of the Romani communities are settled, for example, in Central Eastern Europe. And we also have ghettos, very huge ghettos. For example, the largest ghettos in Europe are situated in Bulgaria.
in Macedonia?
No, the largest are in Bulgaria. These are Stolipinovo in Plovdiv and Fakulteta in Sofia. Shuto Orizari in Macedonia is municipality actually, which is it's not exactly ghetto. It's slightly different in status, administrative.
It's a town.
Yeah, it's like a town.
Part.
Yeah. So this, for example, the largest ghetto, according to the surveys, is about 50,000 people. So it's really huge one. It's like middle-sized, maybe British town, 50,000. And part of Roma have been settled for a very long time, and they don't have any memory of traveling. It's very interesting, by the way. They say they have been always settled, but there is another part who have been traveling, who have this memory of travel in the past. So some Roma have settled from the very beginning. They have settled in Europe from the earliest times. After the arrival, others kept moving, and this is how they reached Britain, for example, the British Isles. And regarding the question to the similarity with the Jews, there are some similarities in terms of culture, some cultural similarities. By the way, there are some people claiming that in terms of culture, Roma are much closer to the Jews than to the Indians, to the Hindus and Brahmins and so on. But these are different theories. And there are also huge differences with the Jewish community. And I will give you just one example. After the Second World War, the Jewish community, the Jews were recognized as victims of the Holocaust, while the Roma were not recognized as victims of the Holocaust. And it was a big problem for us, because the survivals, those who survived the Holocaust, were denied compensations by the German courts, for example. And it took many years of struggle, and it until 1982, when the Western German government finally recognized Roma as victims of the racial laws, Nuremberg racial laws. And only after 1982, Roma were entitled to apply for compensations. So this is one difference in terms of strategies for advocacy and the political strategies of the two communities. They are very different. And even today, the attitude, for example, of the European Commission is quite different to the two communities. Well, for example, the President of the European Parliament, who have been addressed with this petition that I mentioned earlier, the petition against the fascist MEP, Angel Dzhambazki from Bulgaria. The President of the European Parliament remained silent on this petition. And he has generally negative attitude towards Roma, because he allows members of the European Parliament to make public statements, anti-Roma statements in the European Parliament, while he is very concerned when it comes to Jews. And he has recently addressed a Jewish conference of the Jewish rabbis, which took place in Holland, in Netherlands. And he said that there is no Europe without Jews. So you can see the big difference in the attitudes towards the two communities. Although the two communities have many similarities of persecution, for example, common history of persecution back in the time. And they were compared many times. These two communities were compared many times. And they shared also common neighborhoods. They lived together in some parts of Europe. They influenced each other in terms of music, for example. The traditional Jewish music is heavily influenced by the Roman music in Eastern Europe. So this is maybe response.
Maybe to Jews, actually, I can edit, for example, my family. My great-grandmother, she was, during Second World War, she was raped by the Hungarian Jews, and inside me is inside my vessels, I have the Jewish blood also. So most of the Jewish men get attracted by the Romani women, because the exotic skin of our great nice women. And so most of the Jewish men, they had also get intermarried with our Romani women. But it was not opposite. Yeah, we don't see that Jewish women have been married with Romani men, because that way, if this happens, then the person will become true Jewish, because it's from mother of Jews. So. And also we have the serious problem, which just recently started in terms of our origin again, because the evangelical guys are strongly influenced by the Bible, and they are now claiming that we are the 13th tribe. There was a 13th tribe, the lost tribe of the Jews, which we don't agree, and we are totally against these rumors. But there are these people of the strong religion, the science on our back, and we believe in the science, and also the language that we definitely came from India. But this is another distraction. When we talk about the unity of Romani nation, this is another point of which create distraction to get really strong, organized, and really move forward with our Romani nation.
Thanks. We've got a few minutes left, so I've got a couple of people. Anyone else apart from you two? There's two. Got hands up. Anyone else want to come in? So I'm going to take the two and then allow you all to respond if that's okay. Please.
I wanted to ask about what your opinion is. Some people say that the Roma nation formed around Byzantium areas from
last few years, forcing deportations of the Roma people. So how do you think we should combat that? And the second part is, how much credence do you give to this research being done linking the Roma people to the Dalits in India? And this is perhaps the reason why we left India in the first place, is because of the persecution Dalits have faced.
Thank you for your questions. I think, by the way, maybe I have to mention this. I am also I have also studied politics and history here in the University of Nottingham. So I also was involved in the historical research on our origin, backgrounds, and so on. And although my first degree is in law, sorry. So what linguistics shows is that originally it was one group, because even the different groups in Spain, in Britain, in Sweden, everywhere across Europe, they share similar loan words from Greek, from Slavic languages, which mean that it was one group which was accepting or adopting these new words at the same time. And later it was divided in subgroups and smaller groups that immigrated to other parts of Europe. So I do believe that we arrived to Europe as one single group, and only later we developed. We developed in different groups. Different groups emerged during the process of migrations. Regarding the second question, actually different genetic surveys show different results. This is very interesting, by the way. The scholars don't come to uniform conclusions about the question of which castes exactly, which parts of India or which castes Roma originate from. According to some genetic surveys, we originate from the upper castes. According to other, from the low castes. So it depends on the methods that are used, the methods of research. There are different methods also for genetic surveys, for conducting genetic surveys. I have spoken to some people, some Romani people who have visited India. I have never visited India myself, and also to some Indian people. And they said me something very curious. How do you imagine the Dalits, who are the most despised, the lowest caste, the Dalits organize such a migration to Europe? They cannot. According to some people, they couldn't organize, they couldn't move through such a big distance by preserving their identity. They say that it was possible only for people from the upper caste who had different self-esteem, for whom their identity was a value, for whom preserving their identity was important. Because over this migration to Europe and inside Europe, we managed to preserve our Romani language despite of the fact that we didn't have state, we didn't have protection, we didn't have army to protect ourselves. And this is unique, this is something that has no parallel in the history. Because even the Jews, if we take the Jews for example, even the Jews had their ancient religion saying that they are unique, they are chosen by God, and this helped them to preserve their identity during the time. They are holy books, they had written books, while we didn't have this. And we survived, and we preserved our language. And by the way, the Romani language is much better preserved than any of the Jewish dialects spoken in Europe, like Yiddish, Ladino. Yiddish and Ladino are heavily influenced by the surrounding languages, much more than Romani languages. And Yiddish and Ladino preserved only very small percentage, small part of the original Jewish lexic words and grammatics. While the Romani language is well preserved Indo-Aryan language. And it's unique in this sense. There is no other language originating from Sanskrit in Europe today, except for Romani language. And that's why Romani language is recognized by UNESCO as a unique language, as a part of the cultural heritage of Europe. And there is a special day, a day of the Romani language, declared by UNESCO as a day of the Romani language in Europe.
Which is 5th of November.
Yeah, 5th of November. So I don't think we originate from the Dalits, from these castes in India. And about the reasons, we don't have written records about the reasons for the. But I'll share with you my personal opinion based on my research. It was a deliberate decision. It was our own decision. And in my opinion, our ancestors knew very well where they go, because the Silk Road connecting India to Europe is very ancient, and the traders were traveling between India and Europe long before Roma decided to left India for Europe. So the people knew about Europe. The people in India knew about Europe, just like the people in Europe knew about India. So, in my opinion, it was their decision. For what reason they decided to do this, we don't know. But for sure, they had some information. And just imagine today. Just take the facts today. People who leave Africa or Asia to come to Europe have clear information. They know where they go. They don't just take their families to go to some uncertain place, an unknown place, but they know where they are going, and they make plans, and they even choose the country when they want to go. So I'm sure that they had this information because it was Alexander the Great who was the first to explore the trade routes and the roads between India and Europe. And after Alexander the Great, the trade between India and Europe flourished. At the time of when Roma left India, it's about 5th century according to some scholars, the earliest migrations. 5th centuries AD, Indian, at this time, Indian monks brought the technology for producing silk to the Byzantine Empire. So it was not terra incognita. Europe was not terra incognita for the Indians. Thank you.
You asked about French deportation.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the speakers to make their final contributions, if that's okay. Orhan, I'm going to start with you, and Michael, and Natalia, if that's okay.
I will reply the second question
please,
about
sorry.
the French deportation.
Go on.
Yeah.
According to the French.
So answer that, and then make your final comments, then hand over to Orhan and Natalia.
French deportation. It's about Romanian Roma, most of our brothers and Bulgarian Roma. Also for the Czechoslovakians.
Why are they deporting? What's the excuse?
Why they deporting? Why they deport from here?
Because they're racist bastards.
Question mark.
That's it.
I think the French, agreed when they entered when they are one of the key founders of the European Union, they declared the human rights. And one of the human rights is actually right for the housing. They don't get the housing. Why we have housing in this country and they don't have it in French? So according to my knowledge and experience, what I'm observing from another movement which is happening in France, Romani movement, which is called La Vox, according to the deportations, the qualified person who should get the housing benefit support in case they cannot afford the accommodation. I cannot afford accommodation, by the way, in London, which costs a huge amount of money. So according to the law in there, they don't get you cannot get the benefits when you don't have an address. So how you can get the benefit when you don't have a real address? That's why they're creating the shanty towns, that they can at least these people, they can live there and get some work. You can get a work, you can go to work, but still you don't have an address. If you don't have an address, practically, how are you gonna get the benefits? So this is the thing. They don't offer them the accommodation like in UK. Comparing in UK, if we have no Asian strong community in this country, the Pakistani and Indian landlords, I probably will not live here because it's hard to get from English person or
Many
from the agency to get the accommodation. You need the credit score, you need references, you need £3,000-4,000.
Yeah.
In Derby, Sheffield, Leicester, or wherever the Roma are living, when they are Asian there, they pay deposit 500 and you move in. For my own experience, I paid like 200 when I used to live in Derby, and I paid 200 deposit to live in the one-bedroom flat, which cost me £85 per week. In London, it's a different story. £1,000, so much expensive. So deportation are happening in France because of this. They're creating for them, as I see this is antisocial behavior. Yeah, according to British law.
Is it criminalisation excuse?
Yeah, they are criminalized. Exactly. This is excuse for them instead of to help them, these people, give them the real right for housing. For another example, in UK, if single woman will have 2 children in this country and she already started to work, she's entitled for social accommodation straight away. The child cannot live on the street. Why in France is it happening? Why the French government is allowing the children are sleeping in the park? It's against human rights. So in terms of, you see, this is why I love, on one way I love really UK and Brits. Because if you stand in terms of getting the welfare rights properly, they always look at your human rights. They look at you need to have a house, also you need to have a heat. There are examples of the UK when they suffer for heat, and they give them vouchers to help with the bill. Imagine, do they do this in French or Czechoslovakia? No way. You don't pay your bill, they cut your electricity and you're gonna be in the cold. Yeah, they don't care about the health. So, in terms of UK leaving the European Union, I had the depression from it. Because I was always thinking that the UK will lead the European Union and will dominate the European Union and teach them what is the democracy. Do you think that Czech and Slovak and Poles and this Bulgaria,
You really want Europe to learn from the British?
Yes,
sure?
post-communist,
Sure, Michael.
the post-communist countries.
Don't forget us Indians, you know. You know what happened to us under the British?
But they created,
You went to Europe 1500 years ago.
But they created the European Union, the Brits.
I think you're making the mistake of thinking all British are the same. Because
No, I'm just half teasing.
my family never made anyone into a slave.
No, absolutely. No, of course, of course.
So in terms of
criticize the rich, carry on. Don't criticize it.
the UK should lead the EU, and they should learn the post-communist countries. Really, there is a problem with democracy. There is a problem with justice and equality, and a problem with the basic human rights. We wouldn't stand here and talk about Roma Nation if we will not see that our people are still suffering. They suffer in this education, they suffer in their health, our women are sterilized, there are cases of sterilization of women because they don't want that we're gonna have kids, we will have more production of population, segregation in the schools. I was a teacher in the Czech Republic in segregated schools, and I challenged this head teacher and I lost the job. Because for example, half of the kids should be in the school, and I give them real evidence from national school, where they pass the same test, and they really should not be in the segregated special schools, which really make these people, my people, low labor, unskilled person. So what will be the future of these people? And this is the crime. I'm talking about actually the European crimes. This is European crime against the education, health, sterilization.
Yes, can I
Women
Say something?
Yes, I
women
would
being
like
sterilized.
God, that was your final words, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah?
All right.
Sarah, go on.
Hi, my name is Sarah Daniel, and regarding this sterilization, maybe you will think that this is just rumors, that it wouldn't happen in the European country in the 21st century, but actually it's happening, and I'm a victim of the sterilization. After my second son, he was born also with cesarean. I didn't have any complications with my second son, but when the labor came, actually they used this kind of situation, because 100%, you know, when the woman is going to the labor, she's not in her mind. So they use this situation by Romani women when they're going to give a labor, and they force them to sign the papers, make her scared that, oh, if you don't gonna sign this, maybe something will happen to your child or to you, and they give you the papers to sign. So I'm an educated woman, but obviously I was scared, like what will happen to my child, if there's any danger.
In
It
Slovakia.
was in Slovakia in 2003. So it was not in the 1980s, 1970s, 1960s, but in 2003. So obviously I did sign these papers, and now even if I wish to have a children, I cannot have it. And that time I was 22, so it's very, very young. So I feel like, no, well, not just discriminated by this way, but this kind of sterilization is for decades. It's not for just now. Imagine that
for life.
It's
for life.
is from I think from the Second World War. I think they practiced this Nazi kind of how you say that in English? treatment on our women, because they are scared that we gave birth to. We love a large family. We are coming from large families. No one from the Roma people have 1, 2 child. We have 3, 4, 5. And before my grandparents and great grandparents, they come from many children. And I heard from some traveler and also gypsy friends here from UK. They come from large family, because we are like that. We are very family central, and the Romani woman is focused on the family, on the children. So this is, I think, why the Gaje, why the non-Roma in Europe, they're scared that we will be that much overpopulated that probably we want to rule or something. But we are not like that. We wasn't never in any war. We don't rule on any nation. We are a very peaceful nation. We just want to live like same as another. And regarding this education, and also you have been talking like often I can hear many bad things about Roma travelers, gypsy and travelers, that our children are so stupid, we don't give them education, we force them to get married. This is not true. This is absolutely not true. I know many gypsy Roma travelers here in the UK as well who have the education, and now in this time we want our children to be educated, because this is the only way how they can achieve something in their life. And we are not thinking like how the media shows that we are so much, stupid. We are not stupid people, definitely, and our women are definitely not stupid or oppressed by our husbands. This is something, but again, the mainstream media is creating to look at us like, we are definitely something less, and it's going for centuries. But regarding the education also, I come here to this country to give education for my children, because maybe you will say, why you couldn't give it for your children in Slovakia or in Czech Republic? That will be not possible. If even my children, they look white, and who knows me, they know my children actually doesn't look darker, so they have very fair skin, blonde hair and blue eyes, but still, because of me, I'm a dark-skinned Roma, and they know me. My children, actually, they will be discriminated, they will be in segregated school. So I didn't want them to have this kind of injustice in life, and to have this feeling that they are less. So this is why I came here. I decided to come here that they will learn, and I'm very proud of them. Because here is a multicultural, and I don't feel in London, especially, maybe in different parts of our country, they say they're racist, but still it's not the same like in Europe. For me, the racism here is not like in Europe. here is maybe more hidden. But again, I have to say the gypsy and travelers, they are the most discriminated in this country, and this is true. You have to agree with me. The Roma, they are not that much like under the oppression or something like the gypsy and travelers. The travelers is unbelievable. When first I came here, I couldn't believe my eyes. And they're not even, I cannot say because some of them they look darker, but many of them, they look very white. And I was like, why are they doing this with them? And when I did my research and I made friends with them, then I found that because the way how they live, how we are living, also the Roma people, this is why they are so much hated, because they carry that traditional life what we have been living back in Europe. And actually we lost this kind of traditional traveling life, but they still carry on, which is beautiful. Because we are in this time is no one who still carry. I think in France is still we have some Roma travelers, but it's nice that here in the UK they still they are. And yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So thank you.
Thank you. So Orhan and then Natalia, last few words, please.
Yeah. Actually, she answered your question. If the Romani issue is a color issue, racial issue, even the white people face discrimination. White Romani people. So it's a cultural issue. I want to say just a few things. Just to mention about France, the question was good.
As brief as you
France violated the European law, but France was not sanctioned by the European Commission. And I would like to thank for the invitation. It was a pleasure for me, and I hope I answered your questions. And I think tonight, you heard why do we want European Romani politics. We are talking about Romani politics because of all these problems: sterilization, deportations, education, discrimination, and so on. And we cannot solve these problems through social projects. We cannot solve these problems through social programs, NGO works, because we have tried this over the last 30 years. And that's why we are now opening a new page of our history, and that's why we are talking about the European Romani politics. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Orhan. Before I ask Natalia to say the last few words, there's a brother here who wants to say something. If you can be as quick as possible, sorry.
Hello there, I will try. I have just one question. Actually, it's two questions. So, if we imagine that we can make that party, I love the idea, and if we have the permission and the entitled to have 10 people in the European Parliament, so my question is: do you have a plan how the people, the Roma people, can choose the right people for that? My question is, who will be the Roma people? How they will be recognized? And next question is, if we have such a big plan, who will be financed for that plan? That's it. Thank you.
Is it okay if we just leave that, or do you want to? Anyone want to answer that quickly? If you do it as brief as possible. You just raised two big questions right at the end. There you go.
Sorry.
The first step is to defend our right to be represented at the European level. And the questions you raised are procedural questions. So we will discuss these questions at a later stage when we receive what we want. Because even now, the European Commission, actually the European Union, organizes the European elections. And there is no problem, there is no any obstacle for organizing European-wide elections for Romani representatives, just like there are elections for Bulgarian representative in the European Parliament, French representative. In the same way, we can have European elections for Romani representative through transnational lists, which means every person across Europe can vote for the Romani list. There is no problem. There is no it's not so difficult to be practically organized and to be practically achieved.
Thank you. Thanks, Orhan. Natalia, please.
I really just wanted to say that we have many issues in front of us, researching our own history, correcting the mistakes made by the Gaugier, but above all, our priority has to be fighting discrimination, fighting for our equality. And thank you all for listening, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, Natalia. And so it's on behalf of the Malcolm X movement. Thanks to all the speakers. Myself and the Malcolm X movement committed to defending our Roma people. And that's not just because I was born in North India.
Sunday guy.
You know, and also we have other members of the Malcolm X movement who are not Asians. But, you know, also, sorry, just to have some jokes for a second. You know, us Indians, we like to claim everything, you know.
Yeah.
You probably know this as Roma people. You probably know the sketch, I don't know, from Goodness Gracious Me. It's a very famous comedy here in the 90s. There was an uncle from India who came here, and he would say everything is Indian. You know? But actually there's a lot of truth in that as well. I always say, you know, the chicken, it comes from India originally. It's called the jungle fowl. The chicken, many different things come from India. But we have to thank the Persians and the Africans and other people as well. No, but all jokes aside, you know, the issue of the Roma people is a really important issue. It's something that has very little focus on the left of any given European country and the European left in general. And it's a real shame and a mark of dishonor that people aren't more engaged with the Roma community. Because I mean, they have such a richness to contribute, and they have, as Orhan has explained, contribute so much to the cultural reality and experience and life of Europe. But in a typically patronizing, racist way, we are not given that respect as equal human beings within this European framework as well. It's another discussion as to what is actually achievable within a European framework anyway. It looks like our rights as oppressed people is getting worse, it's not getting better at the moment. It looks like the forces of the right, like that scumbag who made that disgusting comment in the European comment, that type of politics is growing. Our type of politics is under attack and decreasing. So we're in a quite dark period at the moment in experiencing the life of our communities. So it's even more important that oppressed communities have a dialogue and find strategic unity with each other. Because we can only win this if, in the words of Mao Zedong, we can unite the many against the few.
Yeah.
You know, we cannot do it as being few little isolated communities when we have this great NATO and European Union overshadowing us. So thanks for everyone to come. Just a practical issue. We have to pay £35 for the room and also contribute something to Orhan's travel. So if you could all contribute at least £5 each, that would really help just to kind of resolve the things in the room. So we have to talk about money and struggle as well. You can't have one without the other. But anyway, thanks again, and I hope we can organise something larger and bigger and engage more people. Perhaps we can take this issue onto campuses as well. I think is an important issue in Britain and across Europe. And also, you know, I'm a proud member. I'll become an overseas citizen of India officially, although I'm not British, I'm Indian, although I've got this travel document that sort of says Britain on it. But also, you know, I'm really interested in how we can assist better relations between the Roma community here and the Indian community back home as well. So you have our dedication and our commitment. And thanks for the travel that you've all done and the brilliant work that you're engaged with. All maximum respect to you, and thank you for everyone attending. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.